Every tree that bringeth not forth good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire, and cast into the fire, and cast into the fire. Every tree
It's one of Skynet's pet projects.
So this is about traffic lights.
Exactly.
They flow from street to street at a particular speed and in a particular direction.
It's a fiber optic network linking every street intersection to a data center in City Hall.
Walk the block, wait for the signal, cross at the light. Over and over.
Cameras, microphones, sensors. Right now it's only a pilot program, but it could grow statewide. Traffic.
It's not about traffic, it's about information. It's about information.
It's about information.
So orderly. All day I can watch them and know with a great deal of certainty what they'll do at any given moment.
Eyes and ears everywhere. A system that can watch you, track you everywhere you go. If the Turk is destined to become Skynet's brain, this software can be its nervous system.
But they're not orderly, are they? Up close, any individual, who knows what they're going to do. Any one of them might dash across the street at the wrong time and get hit by a car. When you get up close, we never follow the rules. You give a computer a series of rules, and it will follow them. So those rules are superseded by other rules. Computers are obedient to a fault. Do you know what's extremely rare in the world of computers? Finding one that'll cross against the light. Cross against the light.
Cross against the light. Against the light. Against the light.
The name of the new group is Babylon. It's from the Bible.
And what does Babylon do?
Cross against the light. Cross against the light.
Mr. Tuck, it's going to change the world.
The Matrix wasn't around when I was in the Met. I retired 3 years ago, but the Matrix is primarily an enforcement tool. But it has an operational and tactical implication in terms of the Matrix. It can be done for joint enterprise if someone's killed. So that doctrine is not actually law. It is doctrine adopted by the courts. Unfortunately, when you cast the net very wide, you are bringing in people who are not necessarily involved in gangs to target those who are committing the crimes.
Score people. Issue warnings. Keep an eye out. Social networks calculate the statistical possibilities. The London Matrix works like the heat list in Chicago. Identify individuals, connect them, detect patterns.
They have unmarked cars on the block, and they post up on the sides and somewhere that can't be seen.
Is there an algorithm targeting corporate crime?
They sit there, they just wait, they just watch. They know who you chill around, they know who you're around, they know what you do because they're watching, you know what I'm saying? Or they'll have officers on foot in plain clothes to watch what we're doing, like walk around the area, see what's going on and that.
I'm doing an anti-gang project in a local area here in East London.
Not really, you can't really escape it.
I have clients who are saying, I have never been involved in a gang. The subjectivity to get people on the criminal intelligence system, the criminal system, and then how that then goes into the Matrix.
If you tell them I'm not in the gang, they'll ask you, what community are you from? Oh, I'm from the Austin community. Okay, those are body snatchers over there. Those are 4-corner hustlers.
The thing is, who's checking the data entry? Who's checking those officers who commit those data entries?
If they got to breed crime, if they got to make criminals, if they got to sit here and convince you that you're a criminal and provoke you to do it, they'll do it. You a foe. How can you tell me what I am? Because of my address, because of where I stay. That's probably where I can only afford to live.
They haven't told us what that data is. And there's no way to get off the list that we're aware of once you're on it. And they can say that, we're using math, we're using science as a way to do it. Math and science aren't always right. So that's scary to a lot of people. It's frightening to not know how the list is created or to be able to get off of it on the back end.
Once on the list, always on the list, because the computer says so. Matrix, strategic subject list, no-fly list, selectee list, terrorist watch list, because there is no regulated procedure against the errors of the machine. Because due to the algorithm, nobody is directly responsible. Everything is inextricably interwoven with reality. Reality being just the medium of the basic code. Nobody cares about what consequences the decisions of a program have for the life of Robert McDaniel. Just to remind you, code has no conscience. 0, 1. Like, don't like. Buy, don't buy. Guilty, not guilty.
Television can listen to you. Your car will be able to monitor where you're going if you have like an OnStar system that tells you where to go. Your cell phone knows all of those things and what you're doing. We're just giving up this data to private companies in a way where we're not really thinking about the consequences. We're not thinking about what these data trails mean. But as we move into a world of the Internet of Things, your smart house will reveal when you've left for the day, when you take your shower, what temperature your bath is. And for law enforcement, you could see just how valuable that information would be. Why do you have to drink cold coffee in a hot car surveilling some guy when you can just use the Internet of Things? How do laws that we have about telephone technology apply in a world where suddenly your watch is talking to the world? And how do privacy laws adapt? This is the new world. And right now, the policymakers and even the lawyers haven't really thought through the consequences. They haven't figured out how does the Fourth Amendment adapt. And it's important, I think, to ask these questions now.
Welcome to the Matrix.
They're calling us terrorists. Just you wait.
You set off a bomb in my town for God knows what reason.
Your town? This is Willoughby, USA. Your job is to keep our town healthy, happy, and compliant. I mean, unless you're not a loyal American.
We will find those responsible for this heinous act. Our best guess is that there are more Andovers out there, and they may have found a way inside. Now, I don't want any of you to worry.
You reject Skynet piece of crap.
First, we need to shore up our defenses. We're sealing the gates.
You reject Skynet piece of crap.
Doubling security on the walls.
Doubling security on the walls.
A citywide curfew from sundown to sunrise. Now, this is all just a temporary precaution.
You reject Skynet piece of crap.
And for your own protection.
Your boss's really nice taste. It's like Donald Trump threw up on Scarface.
Some wall.
They want to keep the riffraff out.
How do we get across?
You reject Skynet piece of crap.
Try wrapping your head around this. This thing is everywhere. And apparently, it's got a mind of its own.
Sister, tell us what happened.
I was in the Atlanta blast. I've lied ever since.
Heal your child. Lord, send us your light. and make her whole again.
Aaron, how's that any different from God?
It's a machine, Pete. It's not God. It is better than God. The nano is alive. It answers our prayers. It heals. It is better than God. This is a new age. This is a new God.
This is not a naturally occurring typhus. The proteins were chemically tagged. This stuff was made in a lab.
Sorry, the virus isn't behaving. It's not spreading the way that it should, probably because it's not even communicable. They're targeting certain individuals.
I think the Patriots started this outbreak on purpose.
They're poisoning them. They're using the outbreak as cover.
What? How?
I don't know, the water, maybe, the food. Right, who are they after? Well, look at her patients.
Targeting certain individuals.
They're weeding out the people that they think are undesirable. It's not an outbreak. Dad, it's a culling.
You're a machine. Your parts and programming, you reject Skynet piece of crap.
Yes, I'm afraid we're still just in your mind, in your dream. So are we just machines then? Just a reject Skynet piece of crap.
Skynet. What is it? And how does it fit into the biblical prophecy of peace and security and then the end coming? Well, I will let you hear it in their words. When you listen carefully, they expose themselves. Watch this montage.
My name is Robert Neville.
Now this is, of course, Robert Neville, Colonel Robert Neville, Colonel from the base word C-O-R-O-N-A.
I'm a survivor living in New York City.
And there you see the 57, which is 5G alphanumerically, alongside the 666. Let's keep going.
I am broadcasting on all AM frequencies.
Broadcasting on all AM frequencies. This was from 2007 when we were barely at 2 or 3G technology, and they all knew what this was going to be about. China, a fake infection. You see the Chinese writing on all of the walls in this image behind the mobile telephone and 5G. Watch.
I am broadcasting on all AM frequencies.
Frequencies. Mobile, 5G, and a payphone, which is mobile phone. It's code. And there's your China. This is a zombie apocalypse movie.
I will be at the South Street Seaport every day at midday.
South Street Seaport. That is Pier 17. 17 is Q.
The sun is highest in the sky. If you are out there, I can provide food. I can provide shelter. I can provide security.
Food, shelter, security. That is code for quarantine, which is exactly what the National Guard is going to be up to. Providing food, shelter, and security. This is Ready Player One. The novel came out a long time ago. 2011 to be exact. And in it, one of the main storylines is Anorak's Almanac. When you just so happen to spell that backwards, you guys can see what's on your screen. James Donovan Holliday, aka Anorak, the creator of Oasis, a big fan of 1980s culture, Holliday had announced in his will his plans to leave his entire fortune to whomever can find his Easter egg that he had hidden in Oasis. Well, that's what we're doing now. Now, when you click on the link to Anorak's Almanac from the Wikipedia article, it brings you to China Gate. Unbelievable. You have found the first gate. Click to enter here. And this leads you on another rabbit hole. Remember, they're telling us to search for Easter eggs, so that's what we're going to do. It takes you here to the stacks, which is basically where people are quarantined and not allowed to leave their house, and everybody's in the virtual reality world, which is what's happening right now, as they force children to stay home from school, people to work from home in the virtual world, etc., etc., etc. But it doesn't end there. It doesn't end there, because when you go to Anorak's Almanac and you look at Wikipedia fandom, it talks about leaving your house is overrated. And lo and behold, it's chapter 17, another Q. Pet goat. Quarantine. Five-pointed star. And the chair forms the letter G. That's 5G. Again, this was in 2012. We were at the end of 3G and moving into 4G. Look at the wall, because that is called a scalar vector. The very same technology used for millimeter waves, 5G to be specific. Vector fields. Scalar technology, which we know are weapons. This millimeter wave tests and instrumentation paper published in 1991 and talks all about scalar vectors as it relates to 5G millimeter waves. So it appears as though we solved that part of iPetGoat 2. Now they're doing all this under the guise of national security, right? We all know that 5G was signed by Trump on March 23rd. And this is going to nationalize law enforcement. It's going to increase their efficiency 100-fold. Real ID will have a picture of your face that will identify you biometrically by 100 cameras before you ever leave your street. And of course, that was Colonel, C-O-R-O-N-A, Robert Neville from I Am Legend. And this is Dark Knight Rises, of which Trump Tower was filmed. Part of this movie was filmed in Trump Tower. Dark Knight Rises, the Dark Knight has risen. Blowing out the bridges, this is the quarantine, or code for quarantine, right? Because they weren't actually quarantining, but they kind of really were. And the masked villain in the Dark Knight Rises was telling everyone to stay put, everyone to just stay in their homes. They were locked on Manhattan Island. Let's keep going. There's your Pier 17, which I mentioned earlier, alphanumerically, the letter Q. Q put all the patriots to sleep and told them to trust the plan. There's another Q.
Trying to ignore it because it's really hot. I have 2 masks in my backpack. They're exactly the same ones. So I think I'm going to see how it goes and how I feel when I get on the plane.
What I understand, these masks don't do much good.
I do is I cut that right down the middle, and then I create it like this, so you can put it on like this.
Let's make it fun to look like China and wear a mask. Somebody told me that Bane's mask was injected with nitric oxide. Just so happens to be the new treatment for this disease.
Everyone in China is now wearing a mask.
I was in the park and I took it off because I thought, wow, it's so beautiful out. I'm going to take my mask off. And then I got yelled at.
Shaming has become a regular staple of this disease.
Will that become the new normal in America?
I think this is going to become a norm in the next, several months. It's going to be something that people are going to be very comfortable seeing around them.
The trump card in the film I Am Legend, it's the Joker. The white horse, the pale horse. It marked the book inside of the almanac, which just so happens to be just like the Anorak almanac from Ready Player One. New show called Devs. It's all about an artificial intelligence which can predict the future and look back into the past with very high accuracy to see events played out on a video screen. Listen to what they have to say about China. This finished filming in 2018 and it just aired weeks ago. And there in the opening title sequence you see what you see on your screen.
You're good. Let's talk. So, my problem is I have to contain a very complex situation, but the situation is refusing to be contained.
Sounds like a quarantine.
It's cascading. Once a cascade starts, the impulse is to panic. You feel like you're standing in front of an avalanche. But I'm not panicking. I'll tell you why. Long ago, I was about your age, maybe a little older. I was in the CIA. I was based in Hong Kong. We were working toward what we called the American century. The Soviet Union had collapsed. Europe was nicely weak and stable. 21st century was going to be all for the stars and stripes. Things seemed to be going pretty well. And on my beat, a popular uprising had started on mainland China. The focus point was Beijing. My bureau chief called us into his office and said, China was finished. Whatever the government did wouldn't make a difference. That hundreds of thousands of demonstrators had occupied Tiananmen Square. Protests would spread across the country. The system would collapse. The tipping point was reached. The cascade was unstoppable.
Sound familiar? Yellow Vest movement cascading across the world. They needed to contain it.
You know what happened next?
100,000 fines were sent out to the French people for being out on the street.
Chinese government sent in soldiers and tanks to Tiananmen Square, shot everybody they could, and crushed the fucking life out of it. Took the revolution by the neck. Today, China is the most powerful force on the planet, the most powerful force the world has ever known. And it turned out to be the Chinese century. My point? Everything's containable, but only if you're willing to do what it takes. You are a dissident. I am a tank. Do you believe me? I'm willing to do what it takes. Do you believe me?
They're willing to do what it takes. In their own words. Finished filming in 2018. What seems clear to me is that we are on a path to totalitarianism. A world in which no crime exists, at least for people like you and me. Not for the elite. A world in which masks are illegal because they can't see your face. It's national security, right? We got to make sure we can identify you. It's all going to be about identification and public health and safety, right? Because if they can't see you and identify you and know if you've had your VCs yet, then you become a threat to national security. Am I right? You'll be fined on sight for not honoring quarantine laws and curfews under national security. There will be seamless data and instant information. Drone swarms like the Locust Army. And once cash is gone, the government will have 100% efficiency in collecting taxes on every source of income imaginable. That's where all of this is headed. And soon they'll be able to claim that crime has become extinct. They'll say that with our new system of Skynet, it will be impossible for anybody to get away with crime. And if they do commit a crime, we will have 100% ability to find who did it and crush them. Now, it sounds great now, until they start passing laws that you don't agree with. That is when you will feel this. And all the people out there saying, I don't do anything wrong, so what does it matter to me? I would love a world with less crime in it. All the people saying that, as soon as these draconian laws start being put into place, because the only thing holding them back from passing more and worse laws is that they either, one, can't enforce it, or two, they know that people have a way out of that law and they're afraid of revolt. But once Skynet is fully in place, there won't be a way to revolt. That's when they'll just go, okay, I gotcha. We're going to do whatever we want now. So I put together this flowchart, I guess you can call it, to look at all the different elements of Skynet and how they will be able to claim 100% worldwide peace and security. And the cover for this is this disease. That's the cover. This is what they're using to claim that they need to do all this, right? Let me get this in focus here so you guys can see this. Pretty soon, you're going to need shots to travel. This is where it's all headed. So, let's look at some of these elements. I'm going to zoom in on this a bit. Peace and security, Skynet. Let's start over here on the left. Cash has already become extinct, or is heading that way. They're not going to reverse this. These restaurants aren't going to start taking cash again. Okay? And they're going to claim that this is going to eliminate all financial crimes, all black market transactions. They'll have 100% control and enforcement of tax collection, fines, tickets, except for the elite, of course. They've already proven that they don't pay taxes, and two, they're corrupt. In order to have this happen, 5G has to be in place. As you'll see later in this flowchart, 5G is the spine, it is the backbone, it is the network that will enable everything we're going to talk about today, because everything is going to be real time. Okay? Right now, they don't have the bandwidth to make everything real time, but 5G will enable that. And 5G is just the beginning. 6G and 7G will make basically an iron fence all around you, just like you saw in iPad Go 2. Let's look at the health aspect of this. VCs, quote unquote, health will become the new mechanism for control. Okay? They'll claim national security under health. And now you are starting to see outside the silo the logical progression of this control across both sides of the aisles. Both presidents, all presidents, have been pushing forward to this. Who put in electronic medical records? That was Obama. What was he preparing for? He was preparing for this. Trump is here to play cleanup hitter and tie it up in one nice pretty bow, and all the patriots are asleep. Your health will become your key to accessing society, and VCs will be a major component to ensure, quote unquote, public health. And all the wrongful deaths out there, you know how like they're giving us medicines that kill us? They'll be hidden through total media control. No one will be able to speak out and say that they were VC damaged or anything like that. The media will just have total and complete control, because what's your option? You can't speak out because of what we're going to talk about next. An electronic database will track compliance in real time. In other words, they'll pull up your electronic medical record instantaneously and see if you are clear for travel or to move about the country or to go to work or whatever else it is you want to do. Enter a daycare facility, enter a senior home to see your grandparent, whatever the case may be. Now, how are they going to enforce all this without the world going bananas? Well, that would be internet security. And that's just a euphemism for censorship of all publications that threaten national security. those who influence and deter people away from lawful activities will be scrubbed from the internet in real time. Again, 5G is necessary for that. Now, a particular country is written into American law to help with internet security. And I can't even name that country because people that I've helped build their channels by recommending their channel, despite many of you saying, Casey, why are you sending us to a channel that doesn't even believe in Christ? Stab me in the back. I'm still pulling the knife out. You guys asked me, Casey, why don't you work with more channels? This is why. And the very fact that I can't even tell you the name of the country that's working with the United States internet security tells you everything you need to know about the people that are in control of that country. I'm not talking about a race of people. I'm talking about the people that are in control of that country. The synagogue of Satan, which Jesus spoke about. If you don't believe in Jesus, you'll never understand that. Next aspect of this, drone patrol. We've been talking about this too. 5G dependent patrol technology. Same stuff they're practicing over in the Middle East, right? They've been practicing this for the last 20 years. They'll employ this facial recognition, and this will render 100% enforcement efficiency for us, not them. They get turned off. They don't have to be in this grid, but you and I will. The elite, again, those in control, will do whatever they want to do and never get caught for it. And biometrics will link you to your national ID instantaneously. And law enforcement will be deployed immediately. They will be working at 100% efficiency. And when I say 100% efficiency, I'm talking about instead of sending people out to patrol and wasting lots and lots of time patrolling, which is basically what most law enforcement does. They spend the majority of their time on patrol. That will all be gone, and they'll just get a signal. I mean, they'll be out there in a wide grid in most likely places where a crime will occur. This is already happening in the UK. In fact, they named their enforcement arm Skynet after the Terminator franchise. And so they are in this holding pattern, but they're not out driving around, wasting fuel, putting miles on cars. They're just sitting there, waiting for you not to pay your taxes. They'll know exactly where you are because of facial recognition. They'll see where you were at the last known camera. They will track you down like a dog. Now let's talk about the backbone of all this, 5G. Well, 5G is 57. We just so happen to be in a particular century on a certain calendar. We are in the 5700 century. Now, we've been talking about these 5700 dates since I started this channel in 2012. I would have guessed that 57, the 5700 century, would somehow link in to 5G. But here we are at the close, at the end of the 5700 century, which just so happens to spill over into the new American calendar century, Gregorian calendar century. So we're still in the 5700. 2024 will be the Hebrew year 5784. Trump is on 57th Street, and his Trump Tower is laid out like cell phone signal bars. 5G will be the backbone of the internet. It is necessary to drive the engine for complete and total control. We're secretly working towards being like China, while pretending to oppose it. Right-left paradigm. Probably as we speak, when all of us are being told to stay home, they might even be testing out these self-driving cars. We're going to get to that as well. That will be part of the peace and security deal. Self-driving cars. Who is the human force that's going to enforce all this? Well, they're going to need a lot of foot soldiers, right? National Guard, mercenaries, retired active duty personnel, which Trump just announced, who he says are chomping at the bit to get back in the action. Why? Because those poor men and women have been obliterated. Many of them woke up to the lie. One particular fellow who tried to make a film about it called Gray State came straight out and said, it's a lie. They couldn't let him live very long. And so these poor men and women who have been put on the watch list, many of them have had their form of self-defense taken away from them, are tricked by this new disease into thinking that they can actually do something to help the American people. And instead, they will become the enforcers. Let's look at transportation. 5G will enable self-driving cars that the government will claim can reduce traffic deaths by 99%. This is just a scenario, but this is what they're going to say, right? This is part of the peace and security deal. National ID, this is their benchmark, collates each of these previous components in real time. All of it will link back to the biometric picture that they take of your face. They can now be fed into the national database and locate you. Peace and security. Skynet. Digital real-time reality will render peace and security. That's the only possible way that I can imagine that they're going to be able to pull something like this off or claim it. Today's show is about a lights out scenario and what we may have to do one day to survive. Now, the Bible talks about days of darkness. We do know there will be a lights out scenario eventually. We know this is coming. We don't know for how long. We don't know if days mean literal days or years. We just don't know. But we do know is it's going to happen. That they've been preparing us and programming us for all of this for decades in entertainment media. They've been showing us, fictionalizing the truth throughout the last several decades of this type of scenario happening. 2013 series called Revolution. Now, this actually aired and debuted in 2012. Now, I want to be clear. This was 2012 and 2013. It only went 2 seasons. And what it does is it outlines the current agenda that is currently underway for the completion of Skynet under the Trump administration. And I really wish we would have included this deco that I'm doing right now on our show that we did on Friday about CERN, because in the series, God and the Holy Spirit are replaced by trillions of quantum nanoparticles that can do all kinds of things. They're very godlike. They can resurrect life. They can view all of creation at one time. They kind of resemble like fireflies. And they can even cause people to spontaneously combust with just a single thought. Believe it or not, this is the goal of CERN. CERN is basically the central CPU of the hive mind, of the internet, and they want to replace God. They want to be the omniscient power, to be all-knowing and all-seeing. And they want to enact immediate judgment on any soul across the planet with the touch of a button. And this is what we call Skynet. Now, if you haven't seen the videos that we've done on Skynet, take a look. Other channels are finally starting to talk about this threat. This is very serious because nothing else matters. All this exposing of all this stuff will be for naught once Skynet is in place, because they'll be able to control everything. They'll be able to censor things real time. Once this network is in place, 5G, 6G and beyond, once they have the computing power to close all the loops, the financial systems, everything. When I talk about financial systems, I'm not talking about, the financial crash. What I'm talking about is control of the financial system. So there are no more loopholes. There won't be any more offshore accounts, except for the elite, right? There won't be any more not paying your taxes. Everything, the whole loop will be tied up. And it will be impossible to defy the beast. And the beast will force you into doing things you don't want to do. Things you don't agree should be lawful, that you used to be able to just do. Now you won't be able to do them, because there will be complete and total digital artificial intelligence domination across the planet. You'll be forced into compliance, and if you don't, you'll face heavy fines, and you'll be faced with a choice. Do I want to lose my liberty? Do I want to lose my freedom? Do I want to lose my money in order to defy? And many people will just simply give in, because they don't want to lose. They don't want to go to jail. They don't want to lose their money by having to pay fines. And this is where it's all headed, you guys. Now, in a minute here, I'm going to play this montage, which I already published like on Sunday. Many of you have seen it, but we're going to break it down scene by scene. They even actually mentioned Trump's name. Now, remember, this was in 2013 when the episode that I'm going to show you mentions Trump's name. They mention the wall that Trump's talking about. Now, put yourself back in 2013. I had a fledgling YouTube channel, maybe 10,000 subscribers or so. We were talking about everything else except Trump becoming president of the United States and building a wall. Nobody was talking about that back then, because Obama was in power. And Obama wasn't really talking about a wall. They even have in this series fake outbreaks, and there are several problem reaction solution scenarios. And just like in the series, we have become the domestic threat under Trump's FBI appointment. Now, for many of you that missed that story, the FBI leaked a memo, which of course the memo was approved by the director of the FBI under Trump. It was Trump's appointment. So, people can do smoke and mirrors all day and say, oh, that's the deep state. No, it was his appointment. And Trump never retracted that leaked memo. He never tweeted and said that wasn't my directive. He never said that. So it's approved by his appointment. And in that memo, they talked about domestic threats, and they named you and me, and even the Q followers who have so voraciously defended Trump. They even named them as the top domestic threat at this time, for real conspiracies and for fake conspiracies, because they want to control the flow of data. These are the beginnings of Skynet. They have to identify the threats first, and then they have to state what they're doing, let us know what they're doing, and then they enact the plan. Okay, trust the plan. Well, you're trusting a plan that's going to put you in a prison. So we're going to break this down in simple terms so that you guys can understand the programming. But before we get into the clip, I want to get into the backstories of the series again, for those of you that have forgotten. So there's a nanoparticle experiment, and it's supposed to produce power for everybody, right? It's supposed to produce free energy. So they got this free energy concept in the series. But instead, it backfires, and it causes all the power to go out around the world. And the reason why this happens is because these nanoparticles begin replicating out of control, and they basically block power. That's what they do. They absorb it all, which in turn blocks it, right? So there's no power. So immediately everybody's forced into a pre-colonial dystopia where there's horse-drawn carriages, bows and arrows and swords. Now, I almost didn't watch this series because I'm really not into Westerns. I think the last Western type series that I saw was Westworld. And if you haven't seen that series, that's also an eye-opener into transhumanism and where they want to take the future. And even Westworld was a little bit too Western for me. I'm not into the gunslinging and all that stuff. It just really doesn't appeal to me. But I powered through it, and there was enough stuff in there to where I could show you guys the pre-programming and where all this is headed. But Revolution's a little different. You don't get the Western feeling behind it. So it's a little easier to watch. Now series was by J.J. Abrams, which of course, didn't he do Lost? And it's kind of got the same feel as Lost, right? This TV series Lost. So in the series, the strong survive by stockpiling as many arms of fire, we have to call them, right? Because we can't even say that word anymore on YouTube, as they can. So those who have the most arms of fire get to make the rules, right? And so the fear that they're pushing in the series is twofold. It's one of fear of anarchy, like fear of what would happen if there was no government, and what would happen if anarchy ensued, right? So that's how they get you to fear challenging government power, okay? Because they go, oh, well, if we all just turn on the government and don't go by the rules, then if there's no rule of law, then what is there? There's this big white elephant in the room, and everyone's in fear of what could happen. The weak would be overcome and overtaken, and so on and so forth. Which, you know what? I'm starting to wonder if that would happen, because they've programmed people into so much evil and shortage. Even though if you think back, there really was no government. Think about the Wild West. There weren't there were some genocides, but most of that happened against the Indians. But people weren't just running around killing each other and taking each other's stuff. There was an unspoken law, and there was also faith. A lot of people had faith, and they were worried about what God would think if they did certain things. Well, now that the enemy has removed faith, yes, if the country descended into anarchy, it would probably be a very, very, very bad thing. And I think everybody knows it. You look at the comment sections of even videos, and you see how people behave, and then you have to wonder, but government is not the answer. That's not the answer. That's the answer they want us to think. But anarchy would very quickly bring about the end times, in my opinion. Because a lot of people don't know how to behave. But I do believe in a perfect world, you can have law and order with no government, like people did before governments existed. Now, I want to focus our attention on this revolution headline, and we're going to get into the clip in a minute. This is probably giving people time to kind of gather in, okay? So this is the revolution headline. This is how this series opens in every episode. And it starts by the word R, the letters RE are not on, or the letter R actually is removed, and evolution flashes. So they want us to know that they're talking about evolution, which is the Darwinian theory of survival of the fittest. And then they showcase, of course, the on and off button here, and which you also see in the border of the live show today. I wanted to show you guys the on and off button. Now, why am I talking about the on and off buttons? Well, this, of course, dovetails with the lights out scenario, the theme that happens in the series, but it goes deeper than this. We did a video explaining what the on and off buttons really mean. It's about the I's and the O's. You see, on and off is the most basic programming in computer language. And even the most complex programming comes from this concept of either something being turned on or turned off. So with the letters I and O, you can create actually images, 2D images, okay, of anything. Shades of gray, you can create shades of gray by placing I's and O's on a screen, and from very far away, an image appears. You can then program that to take on a color or a shade of a color. This is the basic foundation for all programming language as well as artificial intelligence. So this dovetails right into what the series is all about. The artificial intelligence takes over. And these I's and O's become the building blocks of everything unnatural in this reality. It is the beast. The beast, and it's weird because the word beast sounds like something natural, but really it becomes the unnatural. Now, this is where things get a little spooky. There's an I and an O on Saturn. It's the I of the storm and the O of the rings. And a salutation was spoken during the festival of Saturnalia. They would sing Io, Io, Io. Now this was 1,000 years before telescopes could accurately make out the eye of the storm or the rings on Saturn. So how did they know? I believe it was a supernatural revelation by the enemy himself of things to come. Now I have a few videos on Saturnalia, as well as the on and off button, the power button. If you want to dig deeper into the subject, you just have to come to my channel and take a look. So let's get into this clip.
They're calling us terrorists. Just you wait.
So there's the evolution graphic there. And as I said, we are the new domestic threat. The ones that do not believe in what they're calling us are the patriots and the rule of law and this whole fake psyop that's going on right now with government, okay?
You set off a bomb in my town for God knows what reason.
So we have these fake events that they create. In this scenario, in the series, a bomb is set off in this guy's town, and he knows it was the Patriots. Problem, reaction, solution. The guy knows. This guy's the doctor in the town. He realizes that they set off this bomb to basically enact more laws. Now, this series went for 2 seasons and it was abruptly ended, even though it was very successful.
Your town? This is Willoughby, USA. Your job is to keep our town healthy, happy, and compliant. I mean, unless you're not loyal American.
We will find those responsible.
And again, they give you 2 options. Either you're a loyal American or you're not. Do you see the Hegelian dialectic there? They don't give you any middle area. Like, okay, I'm an American citizen. I love people. I love God, but I don't agree with the decisions that the government is making. That automatically turns you into a threat. You see how backwards that is.
For this heinous act, our best guess is that there are more Andovers out there.
So in the series, the Andovers become the boogeyman, kind of like ISIS or whatever, right? And they're outside the wall, and they scare the people into thinking that the Andovers, which I believe is like a code for holdovers. You know, you guys know I do a lot of fishing, and they have, when the trout survives to the next season in the river, it's called a holdover trout. And those are the trophy trout. Those are the ones that grow a few extra inches. They're strong, so they survive, and they go against all the laws of nature by basically surviving in the warmer water, by finding deep pockets of cool water to survive. And so the Andovers become the holdovers. That's all of us who find a way to live in this system without being part of the system, but it's very difficult to do.
And they may have found a way inside. Now, I don't want any of you to worry.
And there's the wall, of course. Let's pull that back again.
Our best guess is that there are more Andovers out there, and they may have found a way inside. Now, I don't want any of you to worry.
So there's the wall. There's Trump's wall, right? And there's the flag. I mean, you guys, this is crazy. There's red, white, and blue barrels.
You reject Skynet piece of crap.
Now, I put that clip in there because they mentioned Skynet. Now, this is spooky, because we on this channel started talking about Skynet We did videos months ago talking about how Skynet is real, the Terminator scenario, which artificial intelligence finally can run itself and it will become self-aware and basically start to enact law enforcement, judgment, jury, and everything else onto the American public. It's a network of cameras, artificial intelligence control that can think for itself, anticipate threats, incorporate pre-crime, and all these things. And we began talking about this concept and how it was really happening. And like I said, other channels are picking it up, and I'm really happy about that because this needs to be talked about. This is the threat to us, okay? Anyone who thinks outside of the mainstream scenario, the mainstream agenda. So let's keep going.
First, we need to shore up our defenses. We're sealing the gates.
You reject Skynet piece of crap.
So it was to my shock and horror that as I'm watching a series that wasn't really supposed to, I mean, it had everything to do with Skynet, but the last thing I was going to imagine that they would actually say the word Skynet, and the guy said it. And they don't say it once, but they say it twice.
Security on the walls.
Security on the walls.
A citywide curfew from sundown to sunrise.
And those, let's see.
This is all just a temporary precaution.
Temporary precaution. These guys are the rebels here. They're fighting against the patriots, quote unquote patriots.
Reject Skynet piece of crap.
And for your own protection.
Now, this scene I put in here because these illuminated ones actually feed off of the milk of human sacrifice. This is no different than what happened in the Bible. The Bible talks about this. It says, do not sacrifice your children on Molech in the fire. And it's no different today. And this guy, he's the evil guy. And of course, they show the pyramid and the all-seeing eye right there. It's prominent throughout the series because these are the people behind the quote-unquote patriots who are really evil and trying to enact control over the United States. And they actually orchestrated the whole lights out scenario. They did it on purpose. They helped the nanoparticles become self-aware so that they could then reset the government, right? And the illuminated ones are the ones behind it. And the guy, the bad guy, has a brain tumor. So he's got to inject this milky substance. This is the milk of human sacrifice. Let's keep playing this. There he is with the syringe, and this milk-like substance is supposed to be treating his tumor, brain tumor, which is symbolic of his dark side pineal gland. What are you talking about, Casey? Well, Christ said, the eye is the lamp of the body. And if your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light. If your eye is dark, how much more so will your body be full of darkness? Now, I paraphrase that, but you should go back and look at that scripture in all the different versions of the Bible, see how they've changed it up, and actually think about what that means, your eye being single. It's our connection, it's our antenna to God. I believe he was speaking about the pineal gland, which uses light to regulate your circadian rhythm. The light coming into your eyes then can turn on or shut off melanin production, which makes you sleepy and puts you to sleep. Okay? So he injects this milky substance, right, to treat his dark soul. Melatonin, serotonin. Melatonin, serotonin. That's the land of milk and honey that regulates your circadian rhythm. When your lights go on and come off. It all dovetails into this, you guys. You just have to think about it. Or you need people like me to help you think about what all this really means. Let's keep going.
Your boss has really nice taste. It's like Donald Trump. Donald Trump threw up on Scarface.
So he's talking about his boss, who's a mobster. And he's basically comparing him to Donald Trump. Now, the joke is that everybody already knew Donald Trump was a mobster. The mob built Trump Tower, which was one of the only concrete buildings of its time. All the other buildings built when Trump Tower was built were built with steel frame. Why? Because they were trying to get away from the mob control of concrete. But Trump decided to work with the mob and have Trump Tower built with mob concrete. Now, as you know, nothing free comes with the mob. You then owe them. So the plan was in place in 2013 to create a fake patriot in Donald Trump, creating credibility by vigorously opposing him from the left. That's where Trump gets his credibility. If you ask any person who's a Trump believer, they'll say, well, he has to be good. Why? Because the left hates him so much. Well, that's called the right-left paradigm. The Hegelian dialectic. That's exactly what they want you to think. So why would they do this now? It's to finalize Skynet. That's why, okay, think about this. Why every couple of election cycles do they change the opponent from one side to the other? It's not because people magically just wanted to start voting Democratic instead of Republican. It's to continue the dialectic, to continue the split and the divide. Why couldn't one party finally dominate for decades at a time? It would never has happened because they have to create both sides. And now they need time to finalize Skynet and complete world domination.
Some wall.
And there's the wall.
They want to keep the riffraff out.
How do we get across?
You reject Skynet piece of crap.
Try wrapping your head around this. This thing is everywhere. And apparently it's got a mind of its own.
Sister, tell us what happened.
I was in the Atlanta blast. Been blind ever since.
Heal your child. Lord, send us your light and make her whole again.
So there are the Firefly-like nanotech. They're in and around everything. They're omniscient. So in this series, they try to replace God with AI. And of course, they mock Christian religion. And I believe this whole Christian, quote-unquote, paradigm that they've created was, again, to later take it down. Okay? This is why the new Christians, the real Christians, don't talk and act like this anymore. Because this is real Christianity. This is the fake paradigm Christianity. Getting up in front of groups. Christ said, do things in secret. Don't get up in front of people to show anyone, because that will be your reward. Don't pray on street corners. Yet the Christian paradigm, the big box Christian paradigm, is to do exactly that. Praying in front of crowds. This is why I don't pray in front of crowds. I talk to my Father in private, in silence. I go into a closet, it says in the Bible. If you actually read your Bible, you will see that very few religious denominations, Christian religious denominations, actually follow what it's saying. This guy's doing the healing for the glory of himself rather than the glory of God. Otherwise, he would do it in private.
Aaron, how's that any different from God?
It's a machine, Pete. It's not God. It is better than God. The nano is alive. It answers our prayers. It heals. It is better than God. This is a new age. This is a new God.
This is not a naturally occurring typhus.
So let's pause it there and understand that this is the real New Age threat, okay? Not channels like this. This is not a New Age channel, but I'm also not a big box Christian. I don't have to go to a church to have my salvation. The church is all of us talking about God and talking about the devil's deceiving us so that we are not deceived. It's exactly what Christ did. We're just following his example. The Bible even supports the fact that only certain people will know the deeper meanings of the Bible, because it's a path that you go on, searching and getting closer to God. Not everyone's going to understand the deeper secrets. Some of us have to step forward and help everyone else to understand it. But with that comes faith. And you know them by their fruit. I'm not on here trying to get you to give me a bunch of money. I'm not on here trying to get you to follow me as a person. I'm not on here with some big ego thinking that I have all the answers. I'm here as a servant for each and every one of you so that we can get down to the bottom of how so many Christians have been deceived. One, by electing Trump. That is a mass deception. The guy has not a Christian bone in his body. But yet I'm here. People keep telling me he's the chosen one and God has approved of him. Give me a break. Let's keep going with this.
The proteins were chemically tagged. The stuff was made in a lab.
Sorry, the virus isn't behaving. It's not spreading the way that it should, because it's not even communicable. They're targeting certain individuals.
I think the Patriots started this outbreak on purpose.
So, of course, this is the outbreak scenario that many truth channels have been talking about over and over again, that they basically are manufacturing and generating a lot of these illnesses. And in fact, that's actually factually correct. Many of them were created in labs and got loose. But these outbreaks that are occurring are not natural. They're just spontaneously breaking out, oftentimes on the heels of some kind of program to give people shots who can't say the word. YouTube will suppress these videos, so I have to be very careful how I speak about these things. But oftentimes on the heels of people getting shots to prevent the illnesses is when the illnesses break out. In Africa, West Africa, this is common. Many of the people there actually attack Red Cross people when they come into their cities, and they drive them out because they know the pattern already, you see. So this is not all in our heads. You can go into the headlines right now. You can go even on a Google search and look up how the Red Cross has been driven out of many of these villages in West Africa because they know or associate when the Red Cross comes that there will be an outbreak soon after. Why? For blood diamonds. Often this dovetails with the discovery of diamonds. So the Red Cross comes in, they provide cover for other people that want to come in and secure the location, hand it over to a corporation, and make a profit. You see how evil this world really is? They don't care about you and me. It's the elite against the rest of us who live paycheck to paycheck. That's why you never vote for one of these elite people to become president of the United States. Because they don't even like you. They're pretending. Let's keep going.
They're poisoning them. They're using the outbreak as cover.
What? How?
I don't know, the water, maybe, the food. Right, who are they after? Well, look at her patients.
They're targeting certain individuals.
They're weeding out the people that they think are undesirable.
So there will come a day, of course, we've talked about targeted individuals, where the AI gets so specific all the way down to when you were born. They're going to take your blood spot card and they're going to be able to, the AI is going to be able to anticipate your threat from the moment you come out of the womb, from the moment you come out of the matrix, into the matrix, from the womb, which the Bible calls the womb the matrix, believe it or not. People say that's a Mandela effect, but I don't buy that. I think it was there all along. And this is why you're born into a very unnatural, natural reality, where there's two opposing forces, good and evil, but the devil has control of this entire reality. He creates the good and the evil, and when you choose one, you're choosing incorrectly. It's the false good and evil. The real good and evil is God versus the devil, but you never really see that accurately because you're deceived most of the time. The devil doesn't want you to see a true difference between God and the devil. This is why he works so hard to discredit the Bible and judge God and accuse God for all of the choices and decisions he made in the Old Testament. Because he doesn't want you to see a difference between true good and evil. So he creates good and evil. He creates citizens and immigrants. He creates Republicans and Democrats. So you can point the finger to the other side and think that you're making a wise choice, but you're actually being deceived. Let's keep going with this.
It's not an outbreak. Dad, it's a calling.
You're a machine. Your parts and programming, you reject Skynet piece of crap.
Yes, I'm afraid we're still just in your mind, in your dream. So are we just machines then? Just a reject Skynet piece of crap.
We're going to talk about CERN, and you will have heard bits and pieces of some of what I'm going to cover today in other CERN presentations, but we're going to put it all together. We're also going to look at some things you haven't considered in your analysis and research of CERN. And I think by the end of today, all of us are going to have a really firm grasp on what this is really all about. So let's go ahead and get started. Everybody knows that the CERN logo encodes the number 666, and that most people discovered long ago. We also know that Google Chrome, its logo, and many other top-level browsers, computer servers, and company logos encode the number 666. But does anybody know why? Now I'm going to show you this video here, and what you're going to be looking at here is the path of electrons that CERN and other colliders send in a spiral circular path. And as you're looking at this, what you're going to notice is that in the very makeup of the super collider, you're going to be seeing the numbers 6, 6, and 6. Now I've got this in high speed, of course. They're showing the mechanism by which they accelerate these particles in the circular path. They go in and out of smaller colliders that spin them up faster and faster, as you can see here. And then they jump to bigger colliders. And there's 1 6 there, there's a second 6 there, and of course a third 6 as it leaves that and goes into the Large Hadron Collider. Now, as far as I know, I hadn't heard of too many people have realized this yet, that the actual number of 666 is encoded in the path of electrons. Now, let's keep going with this, because this is where things really get interesting. What are they really doing at CERN? Well, we did several videos on a documentary called The Circle, in which eerie references were made to child sacrifice into a black hole. Here's a screenshot from the documentary called The Circle. It was in, I think, German and French. Someone found the subtitles. We were able to decode that. And if you do a search on my channel for the word CERN, you'll find videos like this in the work that we've done on CERN. The documentary showcases a dream in which a school bus is engulfed by a black hole. Here's the image here. And there are also hints at like time slippage as well. They show a person on the bus and their face is like morphing as if it was slipping in time. So we decoded that film called The Circle, and that was one of the most cryptic decodes I've ever done, because what it showcases are the people that live above the circle, the people that live above the Large Hadron Collider. And you see that they're pretty evenly split. You know, one side are like the naysayers, people like us, and the other side are people thinking, oh, this is great for the economy, that's created jobs and all this stuff, right? From the monetary and economic perspective. But when it all shakes out, there's some interesting phenomena that have been occurring at and above CERN. And one of those phenomena is actually the storms that it has spun out. There was actually a magnetic field that occurred. It was perfectly circular. Now you can search that and find that story, Mysterious Storm over Geneva, Switzerland. But you would think that that would be like a mainstream topic in the truth community, but it simply isn't, and I don't know why, but that is a big deal. A circular, perfectly circular magnetic storm was sitting above the CERN Hadron Collider, and I believe that the Hadron Collider is also responsible for spinning off some of the world's hurricanes, if you can believe that. And I'll tell you why in a minute. Algorithms can measure air temperature, conditions. Basically, they have the computer firepower necessary to calculate a butterfly effect disturbance magnetically in the atmosphere that could create these storms. Now, let's keep going with this, because there's this CERN animation. And we covered this in a video too, where there were these childlike particles, and they were encircling the collider. They're doing like an animated film here. This is a short film by Oxford Sparks, and they're trying to demonstrate in a very similar fashion how these particles go around the collider and what they actually do. And here in the actual animation, they say the whole world appreciates the sacrifice you're making, and this this character here makes this face like, wow, I'm being sacrificed. And this is exactly the very foundation of what's going on. This has always been what's going on since the foundation of evil, all the way back to the biblical Molech in the Old Testament, and today is no different. So what is this really all about? Well, all the evidence points to something far more sinister happening at CERN, other than particle physics. This is the first computer ever developed, a computer network, and it was at CERN. This was the birthplace of the World Wide Web. It'll be the birthplace, and it will be the end. And I'll explain that a little bit later in this live show as well. But this is the next computer, and it's described here as a workstation computer that was developed, marketed, and sold by Next Inc. It was introduced in October 88, so there's your 88 number, which also signifies 2 Hadron Colliders, the Ouroboros, and all of that, and we'll get into that later in the show as well. And it was designed here, and they mentioned CERN as the launch of this particular computer. And what you're going to notice is that this is a cube, a black cube. Now, when we couple the fact that Saturn has a 3D cube at its north pole, and that its outer ring is not a ring at all, but rather a spiral shaped ring, like a number 6, just like the Hadron Collider. So actual particles are spinning around the ring of Saturn, just like the CERN Hadron Collider, smashing into one another. So we have an as above, so below comparison of Saturn and CERN, which sound a lot like each other. So let's see what this article has to say about CERN. A next computer and its object-oriented development tools and libraries were used by Tim Berners-Lee and Robert Cailliau at CERN to develop the world's first web browser. The next platform was used by so-and-so, but anyway, it's giving credit to CERN as this being the first web browser. Okay? So, let's dig a little bit deeper. What is the black cube? Let's zoom in on this before we talk about this some more. See if there's any other images in here. What is the black cube, and why is there a cube at the North Pole of Saturn? What does this all mean? Well, it is a time prison. And the only way to trick your way out of this time cube or this time prison is velocity or speed. Now, science admits that when you send particles at the speed of light, that you can trick time, or they at least can simulate the tricking of time. Okay? Now, they did this experiment, and in which they got on a jet. I think it was a supersonic jet. And they had a clock, an atomic clock inside the jet. And then they left an atomic clock on the ground. Now, atomic clocks are important because they're highly accurate. And they use, they're basically the most accurate clock without going into too much detail. But they're the most accurate clock. It's not like the clock was off. They needed to use atomic clocks. And they flew this jet with the atomic clock, like really far distances at very high speeds. They landed the jet. And when they landed the jet, they found that the two clocks were different. The people inside the jet basically had not aged as much as the people that were outside the jet on the ground. Now, I'm skeptical of this experiment with regards to how much it truly is affecting time, the real time, you know what I mean? But what's not up for debate is that some phenomenon happened. So there you have it. The particles sent around the collider have no doubt slipped time. Now, it's interesting because these particles actually change. They become heavy, is what it's called. Their atomic weight goes up. Isn't that interesting? And if you think about that, that means something has changed. Now, of course, these particles can't tell us their experience. They can't speak, right? But how long will it be until some type of craft is loaded into the collider? Maybe not the current collider because a craft wouldn't fit inside of it, but what if they started building bigger and bigger colliders? They could actually fit small objects, animals, and even people. And they could spin these people at the speed of light or close to it and see the effects. Imagine like a baby mouse sent around the collider for like a year in our timeline. But then it emerges unaged and unaffected by malnourishment in its timeline. That would be a breakthrough in terms of time travel. That would be something that is actually conceivable given the experiment of the jet. In other words, if they continually fueled the jet that was flying around and around and around at high speeds and just fueled it in the air and kept the atomic clock running, there would get to a point where there would be differences in the timeline of up to years. Imagine that, if someone wanted to do that kind of long-term experiment. So what can't be debated at this point is there's far deeper occult secrets at CERN than the public knows about. So when we analyze all the data about CERN, it becomes obvious that what it really is an Ouroboros. The time serpent eating its tail. And it's always looking for the exit or the escape hatch. You'll notice in like some of these horror films, they always show an exit door. You'll begin to notice it too now that I've mentioned it to you. The exit sign becomes prominent in many horror films and even other films like science fiction and other kinds of films. There's something about the exit door. And if you spell exit backwards, it almost spells time. The X becomes an M. So, what does this have to do with Skynet? And what is Skynet? And why is this so important? Well, Skynet was an artificial intelligence factory in the Terminator film series. And it became self-aware. And then it turned on humanity. Now, there was enough infrastructure in place in the Terminator scenario where these machines were actually able to manufacture themselves because of robotics plants and things. So they didn't need a human to actually, automate the whole situation. They basically just cut humanity out of it and began self-replicating. Okay? What they've done is they've used fictional entertainment media to create reality. And this is eye sorcery. And what happens is this discredits the real agendas that are being played out. So in other words, they depict what's really happening in fiction. And then when you discover it, they say, oh, you saw that in a movie. And it's not real. That's fiction. And this is the most effective sorcery that's ever imaginable, because you can't, it's almost like you can't overcome it, because you'll be called crazy. You'll be called a person who believes what they see in movies. You see? And that is their most lethal weapon, is to discredit people and call them crazy. This is why I always try to present solid arguments. I like to remain perfectly calm. I don't get too excited about anything, because if I do, they'll hang the crazy label on me, right? Anyone listening to any of my shows can see that a lot of this stuff makes perfect sense. Now, the Skynet concept is no different. They've basically done the same thing. They've presented us with reality in fiction. Skynet was an entire system of control, down to traffic lights, grid control, face recognition, monetary, financial, and even weaponized robotic enforcement, which we've seen that play out a few times, but I believe this is going to become mainstream soon. They're going to unleash this weaponized robotic enforcement, just like in the Terminator scenario. The only thing holding these people back is bandwidth and the network. This is why they're pushing 5G, 6G, and beyond. The faster and faster that they can communicate this data real time and get real time results and very fast searches, that's when all this is going to finally take effect. Imagine that CERN and the World Wide Web is a microcosm of the human mind. You're processing data, and the quicker you can process that data, you become real time. You become live. You become self-aware at that point. This is what they're going for. CERN is the brain of the whole thing. And they want CERN to become self-aware. In other words, to anticipate problems before they happen. To have a pre-crime, an effective pre-crime weapon against humanity, where they can stop things before they happen and enforce exactly what they want when they want it, with the least amount of manpower necessary. A central database is necessary to warehouse and store all these facets of information. Okay, you have to process them, cross-coordinate the virtual prison. You need a one world government. That's necessary because you have to share the intel across borders. This is why they're pushing for the one world government. Yes, a world war government is coming, but why? The reason why is because so that Skynet can be more effective. So we're talking about fluid and real-time transfer of large amounts of information and data. And the internet, I believe, was a test, and it laid the infrastructure and groundwork for the final bars of the prison. They had to throw it out there because all of us built the internet. We all built it through these 5G and 6G towers, through the network, through machine learning and artificial intelligence. They are learning from us right now based on our habits. We are the input. The output will be the prison. Now, that doesn't mean we all stop using the internet, obviously, and I think we've shocked and surprised them to a large degree in how we've discovered all of this and where all of this is headed. But no one of us can stop this, and this is why information on our side, the light side information, is so important. They have their information that's important to them, and we have our information. Sharing these videos so people can become self-aware on our end and fight against this tyranny. How do you fight against it? By self-awareness. After you hit this point at which, if enough people know what they're actually up to and truly believe it, they stop playing on the chessboard. They realize voting is fake. They realize that who would ever want to go build a 5G or 6G tower, so they're going to have a hard time finding technicians to do this. People walk off the CERN facility. But none of that can happen until we hit that information point in which people truly understand what is coming. We are building the future prison for our children. Make no mistake. So all of this was a huge experiment. Cloud storage was tested, and large amounts of data were able to be stored successfully. Do you ever wonder how all of your photos that you've ever taken, all the videos, every email account you've ever opened, the millions of emails you've received can be stored and accessed at the click of a button? Ever wonder how YouTube can store trillions of bytes of data from every video ever published on its platform going back to 2007 and before? You guys, there's something supernatural happening here, and until you understand that, you'll never believe what I'm telling you. We're actually reaching a nexus of information, a point of no return, a point of infinity. When it comes to information, is more and more data is generated, and more people come online. For instance, think about the vast amount of information that the NSA is storing, which, by the way, Trump wants to reenact domestic surveillance. He's already got these balloons that have been launched under his presidency, these surveillance balloons that are solar powered, that are just sitting there watching us on American soil. And now he's asked the NSA to reinstitute the domestic surveillance program so he can listen in on all of our cell phone and text messages. Okay, so those who voted for him and still stand behind him, you get to pat yourselves on the back because you're helping to build the prison. Okay. Now, why? Why is this so important? Because Skynet needs data. Let me give you an example of what happened, how this works, this pre-crime thing, which, by the way, is set up in many of these larger cities. And we'll get into that a little bit later in the show. But basically what's happened is this thing needs data. And it's able to process data faster and faster and faster. Every time the network increases, this information can be sent and shared and compared and analyzed. And as the algorithms gain sophistication, the web of control, the noose tightens, right? Now, at a certain point, there will be no escape. So, where was I going with that? I think I wanted to talk about how all of this is part of, it needs data to function. And right now they're looking at social media. We just had a situation with this last event, we'll call it, that happened in, I think it was in Texas. And they arrested, that's where I was going with this. They arrested the guy. One of the guys who said he was like a hero, right? He went on social media and was bragging about how he delayed the perpetrator so that people could get away. And then, of course, they looked at the footage. Oh, all of a sudden this time they've got footage to look at, right? Whereas we never, ever, ever see footage on any of this stuff. We just are starting to now on these events. But all of a sudden they want to show us some footage, right? And on the footage they show that he didn't help anybody. He was just trying to get away. Anyway, this guy was on social media with his face and him in the hospital. Apparently he did get shot and he was like a hero. Well, the pre-crime algorithm recognized his face and saw that this guy had warrants out for his arrest. So he came to the White House, I believe it was just yesterday, you guys, to receive an award for his heroism, and they arrested his butt. Now, did someone rat him out? No, I don't think so. I think that the database, the artificial intelligence, was scanning. It's constantly scanning. And it picked him up and realized that he was a threat. So, where are we? Well, internet addresses have become virtual addresses. Your internet address, your address, your home internet address, basically has become a place where it can identify you as an individual for containment. And this happens when you become a threat. You become like a virus to the artificial intelligence, as well as you become a target for cyber harassment and ultimately punishment. They can basically destroy your life electronically through your home internet address. You guys, this is real. And I believe it's the most important threat at our doorstep going into 2020. Above and beyond everything else, all of the independent research community talks about, this is the threat. The electronic noose that is tightening around each and every one of us. The only way out of it is to share the truth so that maybe 20% of the people can wake up. I would like to see half the world wake up to this. Because once this is fully in place, there will be no escape. You can't outrun an algorithm. Pre-crime police departments are already in place in many of the world's major cities. Now, I documented that in a review that I did of a documentary actually called Pre-Crime. It's a 2-part series. It's featured on the front of my YouTube page. And as you can see, if you go to the front of my YouTube page, you'll see it there, but you'll see that it's been up there for like a month. And yet, look at the views. Now, anytime I feature any video of mine on my channel, it gains 100 to 200 views per day just by being on the front of my channel. But as you can see, artificial intelligence is already in effect. Censorship is already happening. Just even through the very disclosure of what I'm trying to communicate to you about this pre-crime and Skynet. It's almost like anything that has the word Skynet in it is buried at the very bottom, and the views are shaved off. Now, I believe that CERN, being the birthplace of the internet, is the hub for Skynet, the central database, which will find and terminate any threats to its existence.
Time travel. What I'm about to show you tonight, you will not be able to believe as we cover the Terminator series, as we examine Terminator franchise. Now, I'm just going to give a general overview of the series for people that didn't get into the Terminator series. A quick refresher on the plot. Now, the general plot of the Terminator is time travel. And what we have is basically Skynet, which is a worldwide defense system, accidentally being turned on and becoming self-aware. When it becomes self-aware, they can't stop it. It destroys the earth. But there is a person that rises up from the ashes, John Connor, and he defeats the machines. But as they are losing the battle, they develop the ability to travel in time. And in one last breath, they send a Terminator back in time to try to kill John Connor before he was ever born. Now, so far, so good, right? Well, this is the realest movie ever. It'll give you a new understanding and realization about the people that write these films. And you will begin to almost understand and see the enemy. You will see their fascination with the Bible. And when I talk about time travel, I'm not literally talking about time travel. I'm talking about another dimension of beings that already know the plan of God, are so highly tuned into it, in both good and evil, that they seem to transcend time because they are trying to annihilate the seed of the woman. They are trying to annihilate the seed of Christ before anybody even really knew what was going on. This is real. We're going to decode the meanings of all of the character names in the series, because every name means something, and the people that write these scripts attribute names to the characters, knowing the meaning of these names. Let's go. Let's get into this, you guys. Now, why would the enemy do this? Do they incorporate biblical themes in these franchises and these films, these popular films, when no one is seeing the biblical theme? It's because the enemy, his true goal and purpose is to key in on your familiarity with the word, your subliminal consciousness. Most people in America, anyway, have gone to church at some point in their life. They've heard these stories. Even if they turn their back on God and become an atheist, or they just don't go to church anymore, or God's really not in their life, this is a subliminal theme. It's always in the back of your brain and your subconscious. And what the enemy does is he keys in on it. And then what he does is he reharnesses it, and then he becomes master over you. So he's basically playing the bad cop without you knowing it. Now, the word terminator is a play on the word germinate, which means a seed that is coming into growth, a growth mode, germination. Terminator means kill the seed. Now, to understand who this seed is, you have to go all the way back to the book of Genesis. And it talks about, God says, there will be enmity between your seed and her seed. He's talking to the serpent. And he says, you will bruise her in the heel, and she will bruise you in the head. That's an Ouroboros. That's time. So you see, all this goes back to time. Throughout time. That's why in the film The Fallen, he sings, time is on my side. Because the serpent rules time in this dimension until the end of time. Everybody's waiting for Jesus to come back, and he knows it. And so he's going to play on our fears and play on our waiting game. So time is on his side. Now, this is interesting because there is you see the notes here. It was a program, an extermination program. Many of us saw Terminator 4, but what you didn't know is that it was a euthanasia program in Germany. Short for Tiergartenstrabe 4, a street address. And you remember, they shortened the Terminator 4 film to T4. Okay? Now, they were authorized, certain German physicians were authorized to select patients deemed incurably sick after most critical medical examination, and then administer to them a mercy death. And Hitler signed a euthanasia decree. And he killed a bunch of people. Schwarzenegger is not an accident. Schwarz means black. We know what Neger means. His name is two blacks in one. They put him in this role, this extermination role. Do you think there are subplots and some themes going on here that no one else is seeing, but you guys are seeing it because you're gifted, because you care about the ultimate truth? Now, as we get into the Terminator 1 film, Sarah Connor is the mother. In the first film, the machine is sent back in time, the Terminator, to kill her because she was going to give birth to John Connor. So what happened was the whole movie is her being chased around by this Terminator, and then a human is sent back, and that is Kyle Reese. Now, this is crazy because Sarah means happy, pure princess of the multitude. Okay? And the mission of the serpent in the Bible was to kill Eve. Remember, this is about time travel. The serpent actually wanted to kill Eve. He was jealous. That's why there was the enmity between and Eve. She was the mother in the garden. She was the first princess, just like Sarah. You see, these biblical characters repeat. And I'm going to show that to you because it's all about bloodlines, right? So Adam repeated he became like the Jesus figure. Okay? And Jesus undid the curse. But they were both from the same bloodline. And the serpent, of course, failed in its mission to kill Eve, but the enmity was still there. And we also know that the wife of Abraham was also Sarah. And they were the forefathers of Christ himself. Now, this is crazy because Kyle, remember, Kyle was the guy, the human that was sent back to protect her from the Terminator. His name means narrow, straight channel. Narrow, straight channel. So when you look at the film, you see the boy going through this narrow, straight channel. And Kyle becomes John Connor. He's John Connor's father. So when we look at the overlay, we can see that John Connor is reflecting Kyle as he rides his bike through the narrow channel. The name Moses means to draw out water. Now you can look these names up. You don't take my word for this. If you have any questions about what these names mean, look them up. But for the sake of time and redundancy, I already looked these up. Moses means to draw out water. So we've got this water theme, father and son, Kyle and John, and Moses. So who were Moses' children? When we think symbolically about this, that would be the Israelites. So what I'm thinking here is that Moses is representative of Kyle, and John is representative of the Israelites. And we'll get into exactly why that works. But here is a little bit more on the enmity between the seeds, because this is Kyle. He appears in a vision, again, going through this straight channel, just like his son would. You see this? This is fascinating. This is Kyle, an image of Kyle. This is the hospital that Sarah Connor is in. And later, John Connor rescues his mom from this hospital. But here you see Kyle in this vision. This is the only time he appears in Terminator 2, is in this hallucination that she has. Now, she is in Pescadero State Hospital, which means fish market. Pescadero means fish market. Again, you can look that up for yourself. Pescadero means fish market. Who was the fisher of men? That was Christ. Let's go back a couple slides here, because I'm kind of skipping ahead. I didn't want to do this because we need to focus on the enmity between the seeds. Now, this is a screenshot, and as many of you remember of Terminator 2, this is a metallic Terminator. He enters in. He is the blue blood. Why is he the blue blood? Because the first identity that he takes on is a cop car and a cop throughout this Terminator 2. And this is his identity. The cop is short for copper, which gets a blue patina, blue-green patina, as it starts to be exposed to the air. Cop is copper, and as I told you guys, copper is the blue blood. This is why in the wilderness a copper serpent was raised up by Moses to save the people, because they were wishing that they were back in Egypt and complaining that they had food there, real food, and they didn't have to fast, complaining that they had shelter. And God said, Moses raised up a copper serpent. He was reminding them of where they came from, the blue blood. And then thousands of years later, Jesus said, remember, Moses raised up a copper serpent in the wilderness, and so too must the Son of Man be raised up on a pole or a stake or a cross to save the world. what Jesus was demonstrating was a juxtaposition between the blue bloods and the red bloods. And we see that exact theme here in Terminator, as the bad Terminator, the metallic Terminator, takes on the identity of basically the copper. And that's why cops wear blue. It's the blue blood. Their uniforms are blue. And so you're going, okay, Casey, who is the Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator then? He represents the red bloods. And this is what all this is about. They're trying to personalize the machine. And as you all know, in Terminator 2 and 3, the machine, the Terminator, the Arnold figure, becomes a father figure to John Connor. And he becomes human. They're sad when he dies. Everyone cried at the theater when he lowered himself into the lava in Terminator 2. And in Terminator 3, it's the same thing repeated, as the Arnold Schwarzenegger character protects the boy. Here's the red blood. If you wanted to see the juxtaposition, the readout of Arnold's readout, his technical readout when he's looking at objects, is in red. That's done on purpose. Good cop, bad cop. They're trying to massage the lines just like they do with everything else, just like they've done in the last few years regarding sexuality and gender. They're massaging the lines so that there are no clear lines anymore. And this is the abomination to God. And this is all sorcery. You don't know what you're looking at until someone like me explains it to you. But it's having an effect on you because you start to personalize with machines. That's what this whole series was meant to do to you, was to make you feel empathy for an inanimate object. So he sees the readout in red. And of course, this is one of the first scenes where he enters the bar and he goes to take this man's clothes because he's naked. He's born, right? Born naked from an eye or womb is what this time-traveling device looks like. Year. And actually, there are 2 New Years in the Bible. Let me show you. There are 2 Jewish New Years. One is around September, and the other is Nisan 14, which is like around March. There are 2 Jewish New Years. One is the Exodus New Year, and one is the Passover New Year. This article explains it. Why are we talking? Well, watch this. Judgment Day. Look at the overhead pass. There's your 9/11. Now, many people write this off as, oh, that's just 9/11. Well, but when you combine it with Judgment Day that happened on August 29th in the film, and you do the calendar conversion, you realize that's also 9/11. Then you begin to think for yourself. You don't take what other people tell you as being the truth. Now, this goes deeper. The mission of the serpent was to kill Jesus' seed before he could be born. And this is where we get into the Exodus and genocide that was waged by the Israelites to protect the seed line of Christ to come. Now, this is very important because there's a whole movement afoot trying to discredit Yahweh in the Old Testament, saying he was a murderous killer, that he was jealous, that he was this, that he was that. That God protected the seed line of Christ to come. So if you start saying that God was evil or Satan or the other Lord or whatever, you are discrediting the entire foundation of the sacrifice to come. This is important because that is exactly the plot in Terminator. defeat the child before he is born. So these people that are telling you that Yahweh was evil are basically terminators. They're trying to get you to doubt the entire foundation of the Bible, as are the people that are saying that the Egyptian story of Christ was told already. The serpent knew the plan from the garden. We have biblical prophecy of Christ to come going all the way back to Genesis. Long before there were any pyramids built or Egyptians on the earth. Don't believe the hype. It's a trick of the Terminator. Remember the Terminator in the films could like mock and mimic people? Remember that? He could like copy their voices. That's exactly what happened. Casey, what are you talking about? What are you saying that the Israelites in the wilderness had anything to do with Jesus to come? They sacrificed lambs, pointing forward to the ultimate lamb sacrifice, which was Jesus. They had the first Passover in the ancient Israel during the Exodus. God said, keep doing this throughout all generations. And Jesus too did a Passover. Everything the Israelites did was pointing forward to Christ to come. He was the Lion of the tribe of Judah. He was from one of those tribes of Israel, the tribe of Judah. And if people just read their Bibles instead of cherry picking God and trying to find fault with God, they would understand this. That the reason why these Israelites had to wage genocide on the Canaanite tribes is because they were of the blue bloods and Christ's bloodline was of the red, pure blood. That's why Noah was of pure blood, and he had to further the Christ bloodline. Now, for those of you that have ever doubted God, you're probably getting chills right now because you're starting to believe what I'm telling you. That whoever wrote the Terminator series was very, very deep into the Bible. And you didn't even see this before. You're probably kicking yourself because we all went to church. But they keep you in silos. They tell the stories as separate stories. They don't tell you how the stories interconnect. But now that you're seeing how they interconnect, you're seeing all this. And when you see all this, you also see the attempt at deceiving you. Now, John Connor means Yahweh, gracious chief, who gives aid. That's what John Connor's name means. Look it up. John Connor. Yeah, I'm not going to look this one up because this is important. People don't believe in God. They think they just go and watch a Terminator film and they can get entertained. They don't realize that all around them are biblical themes. Everything you watch. On, name, meaning. This is how you look up the meaning of a name. It means Yahweh is gracious. I'm not making that up. What does Connor name mean? Yahweh is gracious, chief who gives aid. Now, you understand that John, his name could overlay the children of Moses, and I'm just saying that symbolically, but basically, they give aid, chiefs, Yahweh. Their job, John's job, was to protect the seed line. Now, even though in Terminator 2, John is a child, the Terminators become like giants to him, right? So this is the age-old David and Goliath story. And he's very resourceful and evading the Terminator because one day in the future Terminator franchise films, he's able to wage genocide on the Terminators and the firstborns. Remember, they go into the place, and I think it was in Terminator Genesis, which they name it Genesis, by the way. Hello. They go in at the end of the film and they blow up basically what do they call that? Where the children are born? Nursery. It's the Terminator nursery where they're all being created. He wages genocide, just like in the Bible. David versus Goliath. Now in the Terminator 2, he escapes on the bike. And the bike becomes his Ark of the Covenant. Okay? Let's see here. Let's go back here. The bike becomes his Ark of the Covenant. Casey, what are you talking about? A bike is used in films. It's symbolic to represent two spinning wheels. It can be the good bike, which is the torus field. If you look at an apple cut in half, it looks like two bike wheels. Okay, and they use this in these films. It's on an occult level. It's very under the radar, but it is true. I've demonstrated it to you many, many, many times if you follow my main channel. And so what you have is you have this torus field, which is an apple cut in half. And the good torus field is infinite. It's God. And it's a tree. That's why they call God Elohim. Because a tree has branches that branch out at the top and roots underneath, as above, so below, connecting the bottom. And that's why El means tree. That's why they call it an elm tree. That's why they have an elephant, because he has a tree trunk as a nose. El means tree. It's actually technically a terebinth tree in the Hebrew. So John's on his bike, he's on his tree, he's on his torus field, he's on his Coriolis field. These are all keywords you can punch in and research for yourself. You'll see the bike. And this is his ark. Because the ark is a pillar of fire by day, or by night, and a pillar of cloud by day. It's two twin opposed vortexes, which is the torus field. Now, I'm getting into a bit of theory, but if you research this yourself, this may become a truth to you as well. And this is the representation of God on earth. Obviously, God is infinite and he's so much more. But when he was leading the Ark of the Covenant and the Exodus, going through the narrow gate as the Red Sea was being parted, right? Here it is, narrow gate, Red Sea. John on his bike, the Israelites parting the Red Sea, being chased by the Pharaoh in his chariot. This is unreal. And what happens? Arnold grabs, he's opposing Satan, right? Red blood, blue blood. He grabs Israel. Okay, this is the Exodus. This is what you're watching right now, is the Exodus. He grabs Israel, pulls him onto his bike, onto his ark, right? Through the Red Sea. Yahweh, Israel. He's Moses too, but remember, John is Kyle. Pharaoh's chasing in the chariot. Then how does this work? 9/11, Christ was born. I believe in 9/11, 6 BC, which just happened to fall on a Hebrew New Year. 9/11, 6 BC fell on a Hebrew New Year. That's when I believe that Christ was born. Remember, there's two New Years. Christ fell on one of them. And here's the parting of the Red Sea. Pharaoh fails, crashes into, what did he crash into? The birth of Jesus. Pharaoh gets split. So here's the cross. There's no mistake crossing the Red Sea and cross. Those are plays on words in the Bible. Pharaoh fails and he's split down the middle. So the sacrifice of Christ being born became the salvation. Okay? I think there's actually even Terminator. One of the franchises is called Salvation. Is it T4? Can't remember, you guys. All this is being played out. Okay? They get away on his bike. You might have to replay that a couple times, but to get the full gist of it, what I just said. But it all perfectly matches. Now, let's keep going with this. Did I skip a part? Okay, so the mom is Sarah, and we told you that her name meant princess. Connor means chief princess, right? She is at Pescadero State Hospital, and that means fish merchant. I looked that up. So it's like fisher of men. The foster dad was named Todd. That's the foster dad here. Todd means red. Foster mom was named Janelle. Her name means God is merciful. This is Janelle. But what I want you to notice is all the red. Remember, Todd means red. John's friend has red hair. John's stepmom has red hair. John's bike is red. And where are we at here? What else? I wanted to show you guys this picture. There's the red lamp. Mom with red hair. Casey, what's up with all the red? Well, their last name is Voight. These are his legal guardians. And that means appointed to be his guardians. These are the people, the other side of the bloodlines that were controlling, trying to exterminate the Israelites. And the red hair is a feature of that. It doesn't mean everyone with red hair is bad. This is all symbolic, okay? It's a trait that is more common. So the Hebrew were foster children of the serpent. They weren't of that seed line. They were adopted into this reality of sin. You can't escape. The serpent is in control, just like a foster parent. He rules this reality, which is what it says in the Bible. The serpent is the ruler of this world, but they're not related by blood. They are of the bloodline of Christ. So when you look at the meanings of the names, Todd, red, Voight, appointed, Janelle is God is merciful. And you look at the address of where they live on Almond Avenue, and you realize that the almond was the menorah in the tabernacle, had 6 branches on the lampstand, almond blossom shaped cups, and you realize that John Connor was 10 years old and Solomon had 10 lampstands in his temple. Now you're seeing the exact overlay of this whole foster parent scenario. John escapes on his bike. The twin opposed pillars, the Taurus field. The mom's at Pescadero State Hospital, which means fish merchant, fisher of men. We talked about the foster parents and how we are basically here as adopted children of the serpent. Even those of us that aren't in the direct bloodline of the serpent, we're basically here on his planet until the end of time. Talked about the almond street and how that ties in. Now this is interesting because John goes to a teller, and it actually says teller on the thing here. I didn't capture the screenshot of it, but he plugs in this device to get money out of the ATM teller. And I began to contemplate and think about the word ATM and teller. And I was just blown away. It was like immediately the Holy Spirit downloaded the true meaning of what all this means. John enters the PIN at the ATM teller. The PIN is the pineal. Remember, Christ says the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light. If your eye is dark, your whole body will be full of darkness. He was talking about your eye being the lamp of the body is your pineal. And you can either be on the light side or the dark side. So your personal identification number is a play on the word pineal. The ATM is atom. When you say the word atom, that's at ATM. Phonetically. Okay, Casey, what does an ATM have to do with atom? Well, what do they always tell you? Remember your PIN. Remember your PIN. Right? If you forget your PIN, your whole life falls apart. You have to get verified again. Your pineal is your PIN, you guys. Atom is atom. ATM is atom. What they want is your money on your mind instead of God. This becomes your God. This becomes your focus. The ATM machine. The teller is a play on the word fortune teller. Let that sink in for a minute. And it's exactly what money does. The serpent wrapped around the pole is the dollar sign. Now, as we get in more into this is from Terminator 2. There's a T-1000. That's the copper. He's the blue blood, right? And the T-800, which is Arnold, he's the red blood. And we showed you that. Red versus blue. And they engage in combat. And they're trying to humanize Arnold to make him be like human so that we can all one day head toward transhumanism and everyone's going to be okay with it. This is a classic case of good cop, bad cop. The red and the blue. Neither one is the answer. Both are bad. Yet one poses as good. So then I began to think about this. What does this T mean? Well, T is the 20th letter of the alphabet. T and T is 20 and 20. That's 40. There's your 40 years in the wilderness of the Israelites. There's your 40 days and 40 nights of fasting by Christ. There's your 40 days and nights that it rained during the flood. It's all there. And T is like the cross. Just as Moses was raised up a serpent on a cross in the wilderness, so shall the Son of Man be raised up. Those are Jesus' words. There's your T and your T, your pair of T's. Now the Pharaoh chases Moses, which is John, and the Israelites, John, through the Red Sea. We showed you that in that narrow channel. The T-800 represents God, the good cop, but bad cop. It's to confuse you, right? In the film, he's bad. That option is not, but they want you to believe that it is. Okay, so they represent Arnold as God, basically. Told you that the arcs are the motorcycles and that they survive, and Jesus is born on 9/11 after they go through the Exodus. The seed line is preserved, just like in the film. The Terminators fail. The Pharaoh fails. And the two Terminators, or the two, God and Israel, get onto one bike. That's the ark. They're led by the ark through the narrow gate. And then the one Pharaoh is split into two at the crucifixion. And when Jesus died, he conquered death. He split the seed back apart. This is important. He split the seed back apart when he died on the cross. He took the serpent. He uprooted the weeds out of the wheat, but only through belief in him. And remember, he had to believe in God, right? He had to believe. He had to have faith and let him pull him off, put him on from the red bike onto God's bike. Remember, this is all messed up. This is a sorcery. So I'm not trying to say that Arnold is God in the literal way. That's what they want you to believe he is, but he's a machine. Always remember that. So he had to have faith. The Israelites had faith. They followed the ark through the narrow gate as the Pharaoh was chasing them, and the Pharaoh failed. That's exactly what you're looking at in the scene. So those who believe are saved. You have to have faith. Faith to jump from one bike to the other. Jump from earth to heaven with God. Like I said, I believe Christ was born on 9/11 BC. That was on a new year, which dovetails with the Passover New Year date in the film. What does the Terminator do? He clones and kills. That is what the serpent does. He clones and kills. Osiris, Horus, those are clones. Understand it. Yahweh, trying to say he's Satan, that's a clone. He takes your God-given gifts of voice, looks, dancing, and he hijacks them for his own purposes so that he can deceive others. This is what he does. Now, at a certain point, they ask Arnold, or John asks Arnold, how long does your battery last? And Arnold Schwarzenegger says, 120 years. This is in the Bible. God says, my spirit will contend with them for 120 years, which many people believe that either could mean that our lifespans are now limited to 120 years. Different thoughts about what that could mean. I wanted to show you guys the milk of human sacrifice and explain to you that many times when you watch these films, just before someone dies, they're drinking milk or milk is spilt. So we've got all these films, 007 Living Daylights with the Milkman. We've got the Milkman in Lost Boys, the milk carton with 9/11 in the date. We've got milk in the Believers film, milk in the 88 film with Lloyd, the guy who played time travel. She drinks milk every time she's going to kill someone. Milk in Clockwork Orange and milk in The Last Jedi. And it's no different in the Terminator film. This is Todd, which means red, is killed by Janelle. These are the foster parents of John. Because she clones Janelle. God is merciful, that's her name, what it means. And she kills Todd because Todd's running his mouth, right? While they're trying to trick John on the phone. And because they want John to tell them where he is. So she kills Todd. And he's drinking milk. What does this mean? Well, no one ever told you this before, but I'm going to explain it to you. Remember when they had the missing children on the milk cartons? Milk is Molech, who people sacrificed children to him in ancient times. Molech, M-O-L-E-K. When you take out the consonants, which is what you do in Hebrew language, you take out, the vowels, you take out the vowels. There are no vowels in the Hebrew language. You have M-L-K, and that's milk. Molech. When you look up at night in the stars and you see them spinning at the equator, They form the eyes of Molech. And what do you see in the stars? You see the Milky Way. And if you were to do time-lapse photography, you would see the stars spinning, and you would see the milk draining out into the darkness of between the stars. That's how sick these people are. They worship the darkness. They worship Molech. They worship child sacrifice. And they knew exactly what they were doing when they put the children on the milk carton in the 1980s. Eaton Patz was the first boy on the milk carton. Eaton is a play on the word eaten, because that's what they do. The first cannibals were the fallen ones in the Nephilim. They consumed all the acquisitions of men, and they began to even consume men themselves. This is the book of Enoch. So now you know the truth, and you'll begin to notice milk being spilt in all the entertainment that you watch before someone gets hurt or is killed. Now, so the metallic Terminator basically infiltrates the hospital because he's trying to kill John's mom, who's stuck in the hospital. She's a prisoner there. And then impersonate her to lure John out, right? Here's your Illuminati checkerboard floor. Now, you guys rarely hear me talk about the checkerboard because it's so obvious. Everybody knows what it is now. Everybody knows when they see a Freemason symbol. And they have this metallic Terminator can take on any object, its shape and form. He becomes the checkerboard floor. He becomes the duality. And that's what this really means, the black and the white. He becomes it. The duality comes up out of the floor. Here's the license plate of the cop, the blue blood, the serpent. And it obviously, 999 is 666, and 18 is 666, because 6 plus 6 plus 6 is 18. So you have a 999, you have a 666, there's your 69. There is the Ouroboros, the yin and yang, the snake eating its tail, the enmity between the two seeds on the license plates. But most of the license plates in films mean something. We've decoded that in many films. Now, this is where things get interesting, because we've talked about the pineal gland. I showed you the pin code. Let me explain to you what's happening in the scene. Arnold tells him, open my brain and get my CPU, my central processing unit. And where is the central processing unit located? It's inside his pineal position. This is the front of his head. This is his forehead. This is the back of his head. They go down, they pull out a central processing unit. It's at the center of his brain, the pineal position. And guess what? What does this look like here? This looks like a crown of thorns. The crown of thorns around the pineal gland. Now, this is what the devil wants to do. He wants to replace your central processing unit. He wants you to have your whole body be full of darkness. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eye is single, your whole body will be full of light. If your eye is dark, you'll be full of darkness. He wants to replace your central processing unit with a chip. But he's already done it. What do you mean, Casey? He's already done it. All of your devil vices, your devices that you have in your hand, your computer, they're all run by chips. And everyone is in a fog, a hallucinatory fog, zombied, Snapchat, WhatsApp, YouTube. The only reason why I'm on here doing this is to battle the sorcery of the enemy, to wake you up, to snap you out of it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be caught dead within 15 miles of a computer. But I'm here to fight. on the battleground of the enemy to help snap you out of it. That's what we're doing here. Understand what is going on here. Just like Moses and Aaron were in the Pharaoh's court, on the battleground of the Pharaoh, and they were dropping the staffs that turned into serpents and ate the Pharaoh's serpents. So the CPU is in the pineal position, and by the end of it, what they're trying you to understand or make you believe is that Arnold the Terminator can be considered human. He was a better dad to John than any man that had come in his life. They were very clear in the plot line about that. And they want to pre-program you for a transhuman world. That is the goal. This is when John accesses all of the information. At the end of the film, they're locked out. They basically, John's mom, Sarah, tries to kill the guy who was going to invent the Terminators. She can't do it, so he takes her and the crew to his lab to destroy all the evidence, but they're locked out. And so John breaks in with his little device that he has, that he used to get money out of the ATM. He breaks in with the PIN number. And for those of you that with eyes to see, you already see what I'm seeing. And that is that when you add up 7 and 2, you get 9. And when you add up 5 and 6, you get 11. The PIN number to access all the data to try to destroy it is 9/11. And that's what Jesus did. He destroyed the serpent through belief in him.